The story of my second divorce from a cheater. When you've been cheated on once, you become suspicious. At least that's what I thought. My first husband, Jay, who I thought was the love of my life when I married at the ripe old age of 22, turned out not to be who I thought he was when it came to the issue of fidelity. In retrospect, he cheated on me over the years until I finally caught him red-handed. The only truly good thing he did for me was give me a wonderful daughter, Belinda. I wanted more children, but couldn't conceive again. Fortunately, I had a protective older brother, Tom, a lawyer, because Jay tried every trick to minimize my benefits, including trying to get sole custody of 9-year-old Belinda, probably just to hurt me, since he couldn't care more about a 9-year-old than winning the U.S. Open. Tom not only fended off his attacks, but somehow convinced the cheating girl he was having sex with when I caught him to testify against him rather than support his lie that he had always been faithful. In the divorce proceedings, Belinda's tearful testimony that she would run away before she spent even a day alone with her father was the deciding point. Even the old, crusty judge was moved to tears by her performance. He awarded me sole custody, 50% of our assets, $300,000 in child support, and alimony equal to half the difference between our incomes for 3 years. I was happy as a pig in a swamp, but not as happy as Belinda or Tom, who never loved Jay. For the last few years of my marriage to Jay, I didn't feel particularly attractive, more because of his learned indifference than any real lack of attraction. Nevertheless, as soon as the divorce proceedings began, I joined a gym and also started coaching Belinda's volleyball team. I played in college and was a pretty decent 6-foot-tall forward, and played in a co-ed adult league. It was only 2 months into my new life when I started getting hit on constantly by all the guys 5 feet and taller. Unfortunately, since I was attracted to some of them, most of the shorter guys were intimidated by my height, married or single. I was definitively done with married guys. There was no way I was going to do to another woman what was done to me, and put single guys on hold until my divorce was final. One guy, Austin, a 6-foot-6-inch tall lone striker from another team in our volleyball league, but gentlemanly enough to slack off in the women's league, even though I had hit him with spikes several times with a wicked grin on my face, took an interest in me, was very persistent, and very off-topic in his comments. Every time I saw him, he asked me about my divorce. 6 days before the divorce was finalized, when his team had just finished a game before my team's game, he was as candid as possible. "So, Cheryl, judging from our last conversation, your divorce date should be coming up soon," he said with a wide grin as he wiped the sweat from his forehead with a towel. "If you must know, 6 days from now," I grinned back. "Why so interesting?" "Because, as a typical man next to a beautiful, sexy woman, I'd like to ring your chimes. And since our teams play the day after your divorce is final, I'd like to make a little wager," he hummed. "First of all, I'm probably about 10 years older than you, so why would you be interested in me? And secondly, I seem to blow you away every time we play against you, so you haven't impressed me enough to let you ring my chimes, as you so high-handedly put it," I snorted back. "Then I'm sure you'll agree to my wager?" He smiled slyly. "I doubt it, but let's hear it," I grinned. "If my team wins, and if you get no more than 2 victory spikes, you'll go with me for a 3-day weekend at a 4-star resort. If your team wins, or if you get more than 2 spikes as winners, I'll buy your whole team dinner at a restaurant of your choice." He grinned. I shouldn't have been looking at his body. "Sure thing, sucker," I replied. Embarrassed, he called up the 60-year-old coach of my team and asked him to act as a witness as we shook hands on the deal. After he came out with a toothy grin, my coach asked me, "Cheryl, do you know who Austin is?" "He's a financial planner or a stock and bond manager or something," I replied. "No, I mean as far as volleyball is concerned." "No, not really. He's a pretty decent player, but I never thought he had any real merit in volleyball," I replied, puzzled by the question. He was an NCAA All-American in his last year of college and only didn't go to Europe because he was also smart and started his own hedge fund. He plays quarter speed in our league just to socialize and stay in shape. I hope you really like him because you're going with him for a 3-day weekend and his team will undoubtedly win, the coach grumbled. I played the first game that night very poorly because I was concerned about being cheated and excited at the same time. However, in the second and third games, I played as well as I had ever played in this league, given my 35-year-old body. My divorce was final, and the following Friday I had a celebratory dinner with Tom, his wife Sue, and Ginny's daughter Belinda, and my parents. The following Saturday, before the volleyball game against Austin's team, I was as excited as I had never been since college because the stakes were high and Austin was smiling confidently. After we lost the first game 25-5 and Austin blocked all of my shots, Coach told all of my teammates about the bet. They took it good-naturedly, but made me sit out the second game so Austin wouldn't completely dominate. He could have beaten us in the first game himself, so we only lost 25-19, which meant there was no third tie-breaking set. After the second game, a smiling Austin came up to me and said, "How about the weekend of the 28th? Volleyball season will be over and we can go to that new resort near Springfield Friday through Sunday, returning Monday morning." "I really should cancel the bet because you're screwing with me," I snorted. Then I looked at his body again, and since I hadn't had sex in the 6 months the divorce had lasted, I unconsciously licked my lips and continued. "But since I don't back out of bets, even when I'm being cheated on, this sounds like a plan." For the next 2 weeks, Austin called me every day ostensibly to discuss plans. I had arranged for Belinda to stay with Tom and his family for the weekend, which she was overjoyed about. I looked forward to Austin's calls. He picked me up in his Maserati, specially modified to fit his build. I had to restow my things because there was no room for a large suitcase. "You won't need a lot of clothes anyway," he grinned when I grumbled about it. I had heard the expression sex holiday many times before that trip. However, until that weekend, I had no real experience of what it meant. Now I think I have an idea. Within 10 minutes of entering our luxurious resort room, it seemed that with the exception of eating, showering, sleeping, and 2 failed attempts at swimming and exercising, we had had sex the entire time. I know I passed out twice over the weekend, the first time in my life from sex. However, the pleasure was not one-sided. I was in so much pain and my head was so full of endorphins that I couldn't work on Monday when I got back, or even Tuesday morning. If this story had a fairy tale ending, despite our age difference, I would have married Austin and continued to have mind-blowing sex every week of my life. However, despite our mutual attraction, our relationship never developed into a true romantic relationship, and after almost 2 years of by far the best sex of my life, we mutually ended the marriage because I wasn't interested in Austin becoming a father to Belinda, which Austin didn't want, and he was interested in having children, which I couldn't give him even if I wanted to. After Austin and I broke up, I was very careful about dating and looking for just the right guy. By then, my confidence was at an all-time high because my body looked more sultry than ever. I had been attracted to a young guy for almost 2 years, and I was someone whose beauty and attractiveness increased with age. Thus, I had a choice of men. I settled on Trent, a charming and charismatic guy I met on the tennis courts, and who was a year younger than me. Trent and I got married about 3 years after Austin and I broke up. Before we were married, however, I made my views on fidelity clear to Trent, explained Jay's situation vividly, and made him sign a prenup that was harsh in only one way, if either of us cheated. He resisted for a bit, but eventually signed. Belinda liked Trent, although she wasn't thrilled with him. However, he was kind to Belinda, though not warm and caring, and respected the fact that he was not her biological father and only reasoned with her, not ordered her around. Belinda was 15 at the time, and of course she had typical teenage problems and worries. Trent and I had had a good marriage, albeit not the kind of marriage they write about in the books, for about 7 years. The sex was good, though not quite fulfilling, and certainly not the same as with Austin. Belinda, who was a star in her field, got a good job in Paris after graduating with honors from Northwestern University with a double major in economics and French, and moved there the summer after graduation. Right about the time Belinda moved in, I had my doubts about Trent. There wasn't much I could point a finger at, but the more than slight, though not dramatic, drop in his energy level during sex and his tendency to keep everything about his iPhone a secret, including the biometric lock on his phone and keeping it in a safe at home when he went to bed, were two of several red flags. I questioned him about it. He gave plausible explanations, but they didn't seem quite kosher. Belinda had been living in France for about a year when Trent and I made plans to visit her before he left for a business meeting. By then, my suspicions had grown stronger, and I had a plan matured on how to access his iPhone. Trent slept soundly on the plane, although I'm one of those people who can't sleep at all, as became clear after our trip to Australia together about 3 years ago. We were seated next to each other in the travel section of the 747 on the left side of the fuselage, with me on the aisle. Trent grumbled that we didn't get business class tickets, but I lied to him, telling him they were sold out and I really wanted to take this particular flight because of its convenience. I determined that the upper deck of first class, the most expensive seats and furthest from the tourist section, was only half full, which was important to me. I packed all of my essentials in my carry-on baggage, and the only items in my carry-on were my clothes. About 2 hours into the flight, Trent, as he did on all of our long flights, dozed off. It was actually for a reason. He had worked hard the previous day and was essentially unconscious. Once I was convinced he was in La La Land, I pulled his iPhone out of his sport jacket pocket, gently and carefully placed my right index finger on it to turn it on, and then scrolled through it. It didn't take long to find incriminating information. He hadn't bothered to delete the messages, photos, and love emails. I guess he thought his biometric lock was impossible to crack. I went to the bathroom and transferred all the relevant information from his to my smartphone. I did deep breathing exercises, like before Belinda gave birth or before a big college volleyball game, to control my anger. Without waking him, I slipped his iPhone back into my sports jacket pocket, pulled my bag from the basket above my seat, and turned to the business class steward. "I'm very embarrassed, but the person I was sitting next to is making me very uncomfortable. He's sleeping now, but I'd like to be as far away from him as possible, including being able to leave the plane before him. Can I pay to go to first class on the upper deck?" I said and asked the steward. He became concerned. "Do you want me to talk to him?" No. Please." "I don't want a confrontation. I just want to get away from him," I replied, gently touching his arm. "Okay. Let's go look at the first-class stewardesses," he smiled. I gratefully paid for the upgrade. They only charged me for business class, but allowed me to go to the half-empty first-class lounge on the upper deck. I managed to get some rest in the first-class lounge, even though my mind was in turmoil, but I was never able to fall asleep. When the plane landed, our section disembarked first, and instead of going to baggage claim, I went straight to the other terminal at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and there I called Belinda. I explained the whole situation to Belinda. Belinda had a dysfunctional relationship with her biological father after her divorce due to his infidelity, and she was willing to do whatever I wanted. "When Trent shows up at your apartment, just play dumb. Save my suitcase for me, and I'll give you instructions on what to do with it afterward. Act suspicious of him and concerned, but not crazy. Tell him he should probably call the police. Unless, of course, he has something to hide." "Hey, I didn't get the lead in The Taming of the Shrew in high school because I can't act," she grinned. "I'll make him suffer." At the new terminal in Paris, I booked a ticket for a flight leaving in an hour and headed back to the United States. I figured I had at least a couple days before Trent returned. He had a business meeting in Germany he was going to after we planned to spend 2 days with Belinda, and I planned to stay with her for another week. Over the next few days, my cell phone seemed to ring hundreds of times, accompanied by numerous texts and emails. I didn't respond to any of them and was sworn to secrecy by the friends I socialized with in the U.S. By the time Trent returned 4 days later, I had prepared all the divorce papers to enforce the prenup because of his infidelity, served his cheating girlfriend with a restraining order and a lawsuit. Although it would eventually have to be canceled, I wanted her to experience as much pain as possible, moved out of our apartment, and divided our finances as much as possible. I never saw Trent again or even spoke to him, except for one day in court when the judge was considering scheduling counseling. I testified with such vehemence, confidence, and preparedness, including starting to look up all the information on his iPhone, that halfway through my testimony, the judge suspended the proceedings and told Trent's attorney to accept the terms I proposed, or he might assign something less attractive to his client. After the hearing, Trent made an attempt to approach me, but my lawyer got a 280-pound college soccer player working as a summer intern at her law firm. I didn't want to win over Tom again, so I hired a female shark he recommended to talk him out of contacting me. I got everything I wanted in the divorce, and when it was finalized, I convinced Belinda to move back to the U.S. because I missed her so much. She got an even more lucrative job in a city about 200 miles from where I lived, and I moved to the same metropolitan area where she worked. About 6 months after my second divorce was final, Belinda, her boyfriend Chase, his parents, and I were having dinner at an upscale restaurant in my new city, celebrating Chase's 26th birthday, when suddenly a large shadow lay across the table. "Hey, Cheryl, it's a small world," came a baritonal voice from above. "Austin," I gasped, probably louder than I intended to, as I felt my face turn red. Sure enough, Belinda already knew him and said hi. I introduced Chase and his parents. Austin apologized for the intrusion, but asked for my cell phone number. "I tried to get your old number a couple months ago, but it's no longer in service," he smiled. I anxiously wrote it down on the business card he gave me. It had a local address on it, obviously he'd moved too, and was embarrassed to find my hand shaking as I did so. "It was nice meeting you all and seeing you again, Belinda." Austin smiled, tucking the card with my cell phone number into his pocket. "I'll be in touch," he growled, squeezing my hand, and then walked away. "You look like a teenage girl who just got invited to the basketball team captain's graduation." Chase's mom grinned. "Mom?" muttered Chase. "That's true," Belinda giggled. I know I blushed. I need to go, bathroom," I stammered, as I walked away from the table to the laughter. At least Chase wasn't laughing, but the rest of us were. Long story short, a week later, Austin and I were having dinner at a small bistro 2 miles from my house. He showed me pictures of his 6-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son, and told me the sad story of his wife's infidelity and subsequent divorce with joint custody of the children. I, in turn, told him my story of my second divorce from a cheating husband. "You know, you were my best love partner in life, and we had a very good relationship," he smiled, squeezing my knee as I tried to finish my cup of coffee after dinner. My eyes replied, "Truer words have never been spoken," though I remained silent in response to his comment. "Now that I have kids and Belinda is grown, all the reasons we weren't together before are gone. Let's get back together," he smirked. Even though I had a crush on him, I stammered, But, I'm still almost 10 years older than you. You should—" I wanted to say something else, but he interrupted. "Age doesn't matter. You're still as attractive as ever, and what I have to do is take you to my apartment tonight and make love to you," he hummed. He ordered the check, and not 45 minutes later, we were already making love. That was 3 years ago. Now we live together and make love like minks as often as we can, and I'm Cheryl's devoted aunt to his kids, who seem to like me a lot, and especially to their cousins Belinda and Chase, who visit me often. Tomorrow, I testify about my ability to help take care of the kids while Austin works, as he is trying to get full custody of them due to his ex-wife's destructive lifestyle. Right now, I am happier than ever. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.